what we'll be doing is how to deal with the project, or how to execute the project. So today's lecture is going to be the start, and in a way it's going to follow what the Project Management Institute suggests. Now, from the Project Management Institute body of knowledge, we have the initiation stage, which starts off the project, and to a large extent, it cuts across all the process groups, and this follows the table that I gave you in the last not the last one, when I was talking about project frameworks. So let us just go straight to the lecture. So today's lecture is a project initiation. Initiation, of course, comes from the English word. How do you initiate? How do you start something? So our lecture today is on project initiation. Now, at the end of this lecture, you should be able to describe activities in the project initiation phase, then explain project evaluation process, and then develop a project charter. So activities in the project initiation phase. What do you need to do before you start a project? Then 2, to evaluate the project. Go ahead with the project, or do you stop? And if there are many alternatives, how do you choose the best alternative? And then the project charter, because at the end of the initiation phase, you will come up with a contract where you will sign with the stakeholders, and that will form a legal document which any of you can use in case there is an infringement somewhere. So, under project initiation, we shall look at the purpose of the initiation phase, and then we shall look at comparing project option, and then lastly, we shall look at the project charter. So when we are comparing project option, we can look at it in 2 ways. We can look at it generally, and we can look at it specifically. Now, generally, let's say you win a lottery. Let's say you win 20 million shillings. Now, when you win 20 million shillings, okay, or you get a loan. And when you get that loan, you want to ask yourself, what do I do with this money? Now, okay, this occurs in a situation where you come into sudden money, and then you want to ask yourself, now, what do I do with this money? Do I go into the transport business? Do I go into construction business? What do I do? Now, these are all options. So you will need to compare these options, because you'll find that some options have a high risk and high return. Some options have a low risk, low return, and so on. So when I say risk and return, is, let's think about, you decide to buy a house, or you decide to buy a matatu. You decide to construct a house, and or you decide to buy a house. Now, when you buy a matatu, the risk is quite high. One, the depending on your driver and the people you employ, you may buy a new one and the next day it has an accident. Two, you'll have to deal with the issues of police. One, the risk is very high, but the returns are also very high. So within a short time, if everything goes smoothly, you will have you will have the money you used to purchase it back, and you'll start making profit. But like I've said a few minutes ago, it's also possible that the day you put it on the road, it gets an accident and you lose your money. You decide to construct a house. The risk is relatively lower than that one of buying a matatu. But before you get your money back, it will take you 20 years. And in those are two extremes. In between, we have many other combinations. So that is the general case where uh, you want to invest your money in something. Specific case to software. You have seen a need for a management software in an institution. Now you want to ask yourself, do I use my ICT team to develop? Two, do I buy software? Three, do I bring in other people who are not in my ICT team to develop this software for me? So there are various alternatives. So we need to have a way of evaluating or comparing the different options. So this is why we are going to look at this. And then I've talked about the project charter, where I said you come up with a document which is legal, stating what is expected of you and setting what is expected of the other stakeholders. So in the initiation phase, the problem or the opportunity is identified. Now, in the back, customers are complaining that our teller services are poor. Just give me a minute. Let me think. That should be better. So, yeah, that is a problem. Or the problem could be we are losing data. Our system is manual and we are losing data. There are too many errors and so on. Now, what is the opportunity? Opportunity could be, I have seen an opportunity to make more money. So let me go into that business. So like there was somebody started a business of guinea fowl. I think they were selling guinea fowl eggs. And those eggs were quite expensive. So a lot of people went that direction. You see, that's an opportunity. You have some money and you hear this business is doing very well. So you want to you want to invest in that money. You want to invest in that venture so that you can make money like other people. So and you happen to have money. So that's an opportunity for you to enrich yourself. So this is the beginning of a project. It's either it's a problem or it's an opportunity and it has been identified. So that is the starting point, because you don't do a project if it's not if you are not solving a problem or if you are not exploiting an opportunity. Now, after you have seen that, you look at the business case where you ask yourself, is this viable? Yes, I've seen this problem or this opportunity. Is it viable? What will be my benefits if I invest in this project? Now, again, we have methods of doing that. We have various methods, but we'll just explore a few. Now, assuming that the answer to the business case is yes, it's viable, then that is when you say, okay, let me go ahead with the project. Then to go ahead with the project, you say, what is the solution to this problem? You have seen, let's talk about software. You have seen that results are being delayed. Giving students their results is delaying. You have seen that the solution is a system that you have heard of or you have read about. You've looked at its business case. You've seen, it is going to bring efficiency. It's going to attract more students. Then you say yes. Now, your solution, okay, let me buy my software system. And you see, you have compared various options. After comparing the various options, you pick one. That is your solution. After you picked one, you say that is the project. Now, remember, you've already identified the stakeholders. Now, from the stakeholders, you pick your project team, which is going to start the project. So, the business case. This, I won't talk about it because it is varied. Different people will approach it differently. So, assuming that you have now identified the project, now you look at the business case. Is it worth going ahead with the project? So the business case is a detailed description of the problem or opportunity with headings such as you introduce the project, you give the objectives of the project, you give the problem or the opportunity statement, you give assumptions, you give constraints, and you say if it's within an organization structure, you say where will it fit in the organization. Now, assumptions are things that you will assume. Like you will say, this project is going to last 3 weeks. No, not 3 weeks, 3 months. Then you say, my assumption is that no member of the project team will fall ill. So that is an assumption you'll make, that nobody will fall ill. All suppliers will supply materials on time. So you make assumptions. And a lot of times, and I've even seen with the projects that students do here, you ask them, what are your assumptions and what are your constraints? More than 50% of the time, they say, I don't know. And I don't know the constraints. But you see, at the end of the initiation period, you shall have a project charter. Now, assumptions and constraints will save you a lot from litigation. Now, of course, as a student, the only thing that will happen to you is you'll get a lower mark if you don't put their assumptions and constraints, because you'll be asked questions at the end of the project and you'll not be able to answer those questions. So, like I've said, assumptions, there are things you say you always hope will occur the way you planned for them. But we know that the nature of the environment we live in, things cannot always go in an ideal way. A supplier will lie to you. Somebody will lose a relative, a very close relative, and will have to go away for a week, and so on. So it's good to list those assumptions, because when you're, by virtue of maybe somebody falling sick, what will happen is that you'll extend the project beyond the time you are expecting. Then number two, you may be required to hire an additional person. So you'll overshoot the budget. But you see, if you put the assumptions there in the project charter, you will have agreed with, because that the project charter has to be signed. And for anybody to sign any document, they have to read it. So you'll have agreed with the people, the stakeholders, yeah, this is okay if it happens. Similarly to constraints, your customer has limited funds, and therefore he insists you must use open source software, which to a large extent ends up being free. But you know that commercial software, commercial platforms are expensive. And they are expensive because probably somebody has gone an extra mile to include additional features. So if you use commercial software, you will build in the product more functionality. So your client is telling you, I want all these functionalities. And then you are telling him, this platform that, because of your money, I'm going to leave out some of these things if I'm to fit within your budget. So you can put platform that you are using, or the programming language that you are using, as a constraint. Now, a constraint that does not mean that you'll not go ahead with the project. Like you find somebody saying a constraint. He says, I don't know that programming language. Now, that is not a constraint in the context of a student. You cannot tell me, I don't know that programming language. Then I'll ask you, so because you don't know that programming language, are you going ahead with the project or not? So rather than saying that, he will say, yeah, it's possible there are things I'll miss because of my lack of knowledge of the language. Or he will say, instead of this project taking 4 weeks or taking 3 months, it will take 3.5 months because I have to learn a new language. Then it becomes a constraint. So a constraint is basically, like I've said, is something you have no control over. And that's why I'm saying, don't say, I don't know this programming language. You have control over that. You can learn a new programming language and go ahead with the project. You cannot say, let's say you're doing a hardware project. You can't say, I don't have money to buy this Arduino motherboard. Now, if you don't have that money, then you'll not buy. So what is the alternative? But you can say a constraint can be something like, I am not going to use this database because it's expensive. I will use this database, but it will have the following limitations. And remember, I've said if you put assumptions and constraints in your project charter, it's going to be signed. So when you overshoot the budget, when you overshoot the time, and somebody is troubling you, you'll tell him, but we signed. Now, let's say you are building a bridge. Let's say you are in civil construction and you are building a bridge. And you tell the client, okay, let's build this bridge during the dry season. And your client decides, no, I need it urgently. And then the moment you start, it starts raining and it rains for a month. So what will you do? Your project will overshoot by 1 month. So that becomes both an assumption and a constraint. The assumption is this bridge will be complete in 3 months if there is no rain. The constraint, because you have no control over that land. The constraint will be, the constraint is going to be the fact that expected it. When you so the easy way to say for people to say is big. If you are doing something for someone, you must put them there. Okay, I've talked about these things. Now, sometimes a list of alternative solutions is available. Now, to select the best options, tools such as weighted decision matrix and other things that we shall be looking at will be used. So the preferred solution is identified and its description given. So, like I've told you, generally, you get money and you consider many projects that you could do, and there could be 5 projects. Now, based on certain techniques, you will choose the best one to go ahead with. And in ICT, like I've told you, we could have various versions of software. So you will look at various things and choose the best one. So this is what we mean by the preferred solution is given. So to make your business case, you must do an analysis of the benefits, of the costs, of the risks, and of other issues. The other issues include environmental issues, ethical issues, and so on. Now, having finished the business case, or in the business case, the main project requirements are drawn. Now, a summarized plan for the implementation is made, which will include a financial analysis, which we are starting to look at today, and then which will include a schedule. So in the business case or in the project charter, you'll have done a financial analysis and you shall have a schedule. Now, one of the things which helps you to come up with the business case is what is called the weighted decision matrix. And we have 2 types. We have the basic decision matrix. Now, this consists of establishing a set of criteria for scoring options and summing them to give a total score that can be ranked. Now, something like software, you create a table. Now, let's say you are sourcing, you say build software. And purchase software. Build software internally, purchase software from a vendor. So those are the two options you have for software. Then there are a lot of criteria that you will use. You'll say user interface. You will say response time, use of memory, interoperability, and so on. So you will give, and it's you to decide on which scale you want to give. You could decide my scale is from 1 to 5, where you say ease of use. The easier to use, the better. So you'll give the one which is easiest to use. You'll give it a scale of 5. Cost. Again, you rank it. Then you sum the score. So the one with the highest, unfortunately, but I can put this here later on. Then you will sum it. Now, after you sum it, the one with the highest rank is the one you are going to do. So that is the most basic one. So the basic decision matrix is not weighted. In other words, the criteria that you are using, you don't give them weights. So if you have to make a decision quickly, you use the basic decision matrix. But most times, people use what is called a weighted decision matrix. Now, a weighted decision matrix operates in the same way as the basic decision matrix, but introduces the concept of weighting the criteria in order of importance. So the resultant scores reflect the importance to the decision maker of the criteria involved. So it tells you how important, based on the criteria, which feature is more important. So the more important a criterion, the higher the weighting it should be given. Each of the potential options is scored and then multiplied by the weighting given to each of the criteria. So the result is weight times the score. Now, I will just clarify this with a very simple example. So let us look at this example. So in this example, we have a weighted decision matrix that compares 3 options for a web development project. Now, so we want to develop a web. So the project is web development. Now, in web development, we have three enterprises or 3 organizations or 3 entities that can do it, or 3 ways that we can have it. One, we have what is called SJS Enterprises. Let's assume that is a startup company. Then 2, we have Game Access. And then 3, we have DVD Link. So let's say those are startup companies that could do this web. They could do this web. So this is a web development project. You want it. You want a web, and these are the things that are important to you. Is it educational? Is it sports related? Will it allow secure payment? And so on. So you look at what you want that product to do. what value do you put to it, your website being educational? Now, let's say you put a value of 15%. How would you want is how much sports information do you want your webpage to have? You give that 15%. Do you want it to include a feature for secure payment? Do you want people to pay for something? You say, that's not too important to me, but okay. I may, in some cases, need people to pay. You give it 10%. So then you start looking at this. You start ranking these people. SJS enterprises, the product they are giving you now, and of course these weights, by the way, don't have to be percentages, and these weights do not have to add up to 100%. It is just you to decide on the level of importance. So, because you're choosing from three organizations or three startups, what you'll do is that you will do a request. You'll tender the project. These people will apply. Now, when they apply, they will come, or you'll go to their premises and you are talking to them. Now, as you talk to them, you go with your table. So they talk about, you tell them, make a presentation. Yes, you want to do this project for me. Can you make your presentation? Now, it could be to you if you are a single person, or it could be the project team, where you put in 10 people. This person comes with his PowerPoint and is presenting. Now, as he's presenting, each of you is going to score. So some will, he presents, and each member will look, is this product, is it educational? Does it have anything to do with sport? Does it include secure payment? And you could do very many things. You could have many criteria for evaluating these three. So like in this case, when SJS Enterprises is displaying, you realize he has a lot of educational content. Game access, nothing. DVD, nothing. Sports related, SJS Enterprises has 90. This game access 90, DVD link 90. Secure payment, game access has 90, 50, 50. So after you have done that, that is when we use this formula. Result is cost to score times weight. So what we'll do is that you'll multiply this by this, this by this by this, and you'll keep on doing that. Now we have left these others, but in the end, you shall see that SJS got 56%, game access got 14.5, DVD link got 12.5. So in this case, SJS Enterprises wins. So your project, your web development project, is going to be done by SJS Enterprises. So this method is especially useful when choosing purchase alternatives and comparing them against specific desirable system requirements. So this would be your system or project requirements. These are the companies. This is how you rank them. Now, theoretically, it looks easy. In reality, it's not very easy. The reason it's not going to be easy is how do you determine the weights? Number two, this scoring here can be quite subjective. But remember, if it's a project team, it's 10 people, you are going to do averages of those 10 people. Now, and we know that people differ. Like if you take the educational institutes, you'll find that some teachers, tutors, lecturers are very strict, and they have a tendency of giving low marks. But some are very easygoing and they easily give, as long as you just mention a point, they give you a mark. So they give high marks. But now, if you are having 10 people and you are averaging, then it's most likely going to be objective. But like why I'm talking about that, this objectivity is very important. One time, it happened in my university. One time they were trying to get a DVC. So there were two very strong competitors. Now what happens is, because of ethnic political reasons, some people go to that board and they are scoring somebody 99%. They are giving him 95, 99, and 99. Everybody knows he's the weaker person, but they are giving him high marks. So when they average, he ends up being the one appointed. This was in the papers. I'm not giving internal information. This was in the papers. So this scoring, again, you have to think about many other things that accompany it. So, but what are the advantages of, like, when you are comparing options using a weighted decision matrix? What are the advantages? The advantages of the weighted decision matrix is that subjective opinions about one alternative versus the other can be made more objective. So you are waiting, and like I've told you, sometimes it's not very easy because you must agree on these weights before the start of that interview process. The project team must agree on it. You must agree on which figures you are going to use. But it's better. It gives a more subjective, or it changes subjective opinions to be more objective. And remember, you are using many criteria. You are using many criteria. You have agreed on the weights and you have agreed on the scoring system. Then using weighted decision matrix, sensitivity studies can be performed. Now, sensitivity studies is a method to determine the robustness of trial findings by extending the extent to which results are affected by changes in methods, models, values of measured variables or assumptions. So, to even increase your objectivity, what you could do is you could do trials. You could come up with the trial projects, and you use those trial projects with your criteria and with the values you have chosen for the various alternatives. So you try to say, okay, supposing we change these weights, or supposing we change these figures, does it improve our result? Now, of course, that will make your choice more objective, but of course it's going to take more time, because you may want to do that trial 3-4 times to see how to make the values better. So an example of how sensitivity studies can improve the objectivity is, an example of this might be to see how much your opinion would have to change in order for a lower ranked alternative to outrank a competitive alternative. So you are doing sensitivity analysis. So you ask what if situations. What if I did this? What if I did this? Now that will bring objectivity to your decision. But like I've said, it's going to take time. So weighted decision matrix allows decision makers to structure and solve their problems by specifying and prioritizing their needs with a list of criteria, evaluating, rating, and comparing different solutions, and selecting the best matching solution. Uh, any question? Any question on that? Okay, if there's no question, let us continue. So, that in a way should help you to make a decision in cases where you have many alternatives to choose from. And I've given you the general case where you have money and you don't know what to invest in. You're trying to make a choice. And I've given you a more specific situation where you must get a solution to a problem. And so, but there are many alternatives as solutions. So you want to choose the best. So you could use this. In addition, you could use project evaluation or what sometimes is called appraisal. Now, why do we evaluate or appraise? We evaluate or appraise to look at the project feasibility. Now, is this a viable project? Now, at the end of that, we will say we go ahead or we don't go ahead. And then two, to assess the level of risk. We assess the level of risk. Now, like when I started, I told you, don't just jump into a project. When you think of a project, there are many things to think about. Like I gave you the example of a matatu, and I gave you the example of purchasing a house or building a house. It depends on you. Is it the profit you are getting, or do you want a situation where what you are undertaking is not very risky? So what do we do in order to know whether to go ahead with the project or not? Or what are the things that we evaluate? We evaluate strategic issues, we evaluate technical issues, we evaluate economic issues. Now, these are the fundamental issues. If you are doing a project in the health sector, you will have to evaluate ethical issues. If you are doing so, you'll add ethical issues. If you are evaluating banking systems, you'll have to think about security. If you are doing a project that involves interfering with the environment, you will have to think about environmental issues. You'll have to evaluate environmental issues. Let's say you decide you are building a factory. Now, factories produce a lot of waste. So strategically, it's going to be viable. Technically, it's going to be viable. Economically, it makes a lot of sense. But environmentally, it does not make sense because you are pouring affluent into a river. So your evaluation, you have ignored that environmental issue. All the other things are telling you this project is possible. Now you go and get your caterpillar and you start breaking the ground. NEMA comes in and they tell you, excuse me, What are you building? Where will you take your waste? And then they put a stop to your project. But remember, doing a feasibility is not easy. Depending on the project, it could run into millions or billions of shillings. So before you even embark on that project, you need to look at these issues. So because these are the basic ones, I just want you to be aware that there could be many other issues depending on the project. We are going to look at the basic ones. So strategic issues, and in our case, some of these may or may not apply to ICT projects. Now, number one, you'll ask, what will the project contribute to the organization's objectives? University of Nairobi has a strategic plan. University of Nairobi has objectives, teaching and research. And teaching and research are the main components of the university. So you ask yourself, how does this project fit into our objectives? How is this project going to affect our teaching and our learning? And how is it going to affect our strategic, what do you call it? Our strategic future. So will it contribute to increasing the market share? Now this would apply to banks, to businesses. Will I get more will I get more customers? Will I snatch customers from other people? Now in the case of university, there was the address by the VC the other day, and he said the government has cut the university budget. Now, what does that mean? It means the university has to generate money. So, how does it generate money? It will generate money from students. It will generate money from cooperation or bringing in grants. So, this new product that you are bringing in, how will it contribute to bringing in more students, to attracting grants? So you look at the mission and the vision of the university and you ask yourself, how does this project fit into it? So that is part of the strategic issue. Then you look at the information system plan. This is now for ICT projects. Does the proposed project fit into the organization's information system plan? If yes, in which way? So because we are biased towards ICT, we talk a bit more about ICT. So you'll ask yourself, how does it fit into the IS plan? Are we going to add it onto existing ICT systems? Are we going to integrate? Is it going to operate separately? So you say, if yes, then in which way? You'll have to say that. How and will the proposed project fit within existing systems? Will it replace any? How does it fit with the proposed future developments? Then the organizational structure. Will the project affect the current organizational structure? Then you look at the management information systems. Will it complement or enhance existing management information systems? Then personnel. You are coming up with a new system. how competent are the people who are going to use this system? Will it require more additional people? Will it require will it require training? How available is it going to be? How will it be developed? So remember, these are all strategic things. Now, strategic things have to do with the mission, the vision, and the objective of the institution or the organization. And strategic issues usually point to the future. So that is one of the things you need to consider before you go ahead with the project. So basically, you are saying where will this new project fit with the current system? Then you need to look at technical issues. So you look at strategic issues, then you look at the technical issues. So to address the technical issues, certain questions, a lot of questions need to be addressed. Number one is it really understood what is required technically? Now, this means, do you have the necessary platform? And can you afford it? Do you have the necessary hardware? And so on. So you ask all those things. Now, if no, can this be resolved before the start of the project? Will any lack of understanding cause changes to the project as it progresses? Now, this is important because I talked about the project charter. Now, the project charter has been signed and it includes a lot of details. Now, you don't want to sign a document and there are some things in the document, some contents in the document you didn't understand. Then you need to ask yourself, what functionality is required? Can the hardware accommodate this? Because it's either you're going to an organization which has a running system in place, or it has no running system in place, you are implementing it. So you need to ask yourself, okay, if there's a running system in place, can this new system, can the hardware there accommodate this new system? Or do I have to ask that person to buy new hardware? So is it within the bounds of the current available software and programming platforms? Do strategic issues place limitations on technical solutions? Now, we looked at strategic issues where we've said an institution will have its mission and vision and it will have objectives. Now, strategic issues also go with who is going to fund. Do you have enough funding? So, you could propose a technical solution that is 100 million shillings. Then top management tell you, we only have 10 million shillings. Now, what do you do? Yes, the 100 million shilling solution is the best. But strategically, you're told we have only we only have 10 million. So you need to look at this. Then what are the cost constraints on technical solutions? So that is the technical issues. You need to address them. Then finally, you need to look at economic issues. Now, I'm saying these are the fundamental ones, and these are the things that people look at. But like I've told you, there are other issues that come in. There could be ethical, there could be environmental, there could be security, there could be privacy, and so on. So those issues are determined by the project. They are project specific. But these three are the fundamental ones. So economic issues are done by doing what is called a cost benefit analysis, cash flow forecasting, cost benefit evaluation techniques, and then risk analysis. So cost benefit analysis. In cost benefit analysis, we do a comparison of the estimated costs and benefits. Now, the general question is, will income and other benefits exceed the costs? Now, most of the time we want the income to exceed the costs. Then how do the various project options compare? Now, remember, we talked about the weighted decision matrix. Now, the weighted decision matrix, like in this case, has not really put in the cost, but you could build cost. You could add cost as a criteria in the weighted decision matrix. Now, if you add cost, then you'll have to do what we are now going to do. You will have to do a cost benefit analysis. So analysis is included in two stages. Number one is to identify and estimate all the costs and benefits, then convert the costs and benefits into common units. Most of the time, we convert them into monetary units. Now, costs to be estimated include development costs, setup costs, operational costs. This, of course, applies to ICT. How much does it cost you to develop this software? How much will it cost you to install it? How much will it cost you to run it? Now, it is not a very easy thing. You see, like when we say convert the costs and benefits into common units, sometimes it's very difficult to do that conversion. Now we'll see why. So the things that can be estimated include the direct benefits. Now, direct benefits include reduction in staffing levels. Now, that is okay. I mean, that one you can see it. So it's what we call tangible benefits. Like in the bank, you say we have 100 tellers, and we have long queues in the bank. Now, if we install these ATM machines, automatic teller machines, what it will mean is that people will opt to use the ATMs and not come into the bank. So what will happen is that we will reduce our staff from 100, because most of the time they'll be able, customers are using ATM. They don't have to come in. So what will happen? We don't need all this stuff, so we can cut the staff by 50%. So if we cut our staff by 50%, we've been giving them a salary. It means that we will reduce our expenditure by 50%. So we'll give them a golden handshake and they'll go. And you can estimate, because you can say, we've been paying these people so much annually, but now we are not paying them. So you can put it in monetary terms. So that is what a direct benefit is. Another one could be reduction in operational costs. Now, but you need to remember, and why I'm saying it's complicated is like it happened a few years ago. Some of you are probably not born. I mean, when ATM machines were introduced, banks invested so heavily in that technological evolution. But after these ATM machines were were, were introduced, there has to be a changeover. You cannot just remove stuff. Banks realized, and remember that time when ATM machines were introduced, the mobile phones were not in place. So people didn't have this, a big percentage of people didn't have this concept of using a keyboard. Now you are telling them, now go, there's a screen here. These are prompts you are using. For some people, that was the first time they had contact with the machine because there were no mobile phones. So what happened? Bank had installed ATM machines, but people were still going into the bank, into the banking halls. The queues were still long. Now, when the queues are still long, you cannot start sacking people. Now, what solution did the bank do? The bank now employed people to stand outside the ATM machines. So if a customer comes and these people who are standing beside the ATM machines, if they saw you trying to get into the bank, they tell you, no, well, come and show you how to use these ATM machines. So they show you how to use it. But again, the uptake of that technology was still poor. People continued streaming into the banks. This is the fact that the bank now is even on top of the cost of installing those machines. They have brought in an extra. They have an extra expense because they've employed somebody else to help customers who were illiterate. I think 90% of them were illiterate. So it kept going on and on. People kept going to the banking halls. Those long queues were still there. Now, what did the bank take? What action did they take? They started saying, okay, you can come to the banking hall and you can queue. But for every transaction, we are charging you 500 shillings. Now, you can imagine you wanted to withdraw 1,000 shillings, but you are being charged 500 shillings to withdraw 1,000 shillings. That is now what changed things. That forced customers to now listen to those people who are telling them, don't go into the banking hall, because every time you go there, you are paying 500 shillings. So people had to learn. And that's how that technology took up. So this is what I'm just saying. When you think about the costs and benefits, it is very tricky. So those are the direct benefits. Then we have what are called accessible indirect benefits. In other words, these benefits are indirect, but you can assess them. You can assess these indirect benefits. In other words, you can't see the benefits. You see, like in this case, you can put a monetary value to the benefits. But I've given you an example why it's even difficult to putting a monetary value to this. Now, accessible indirect benefits include reduction in operator errors. So remember, if, for example, you're doing accounting manually, you are more prone to errors than if you used a computer, and especially if you have a long spreadsheet and you are using a calculator. The probability of an error is much higher. But now, how do you put, okay, you know that you've reduced the error, but how do you put a monetary value to it? It's difficult, but it's possible to assess. because at the end of the day, it will be known that there were errors here. Reduced work hours, it's going to be known that when I use a spreadsheet to do something, I'm going to use lesser time. I'm going to be 5 times faster than somebody doing it manually. So that is accessible. Then intangible benefits, like improved working conditions. Now, how do you know that this system has made my workers happier? Now, how do you put a monetary value to happier? I go back to the example I gave you about banks. Now, of course, customers complained about that levy of 500 bob to withdraw a sum of money. Now, customers start using ATM machines. They are shown how to use ATM machines. Now, with the time, after they get the knack of it, no customer would like to go inside the banking hall because for him, it's much easier to access his money using the ATM machine. So he'll tell his friend, this thing is wonderful. So you find that at that time you found that those banks that had embraced the ATM machine technology started getting more customers because people realize, oh, I can get my money anytime. And remember that time, banks would close at 3, and banks would close on weekends. On Saturday they would close at midday. But now here's an ATM machine. You go there anytime. The only thing is that, and is the limit per day, but you can also go and set that. So people started moving away from banks which had still remained manual to banks which had ATM machines. Why? They were happier. There was efficiency. So again, how you cannot measure that, and that's why we are calling them intangible benefits. There are benefits that are very difficult to measure. Things like efficiency is difficult to measure. Things like customer satisfaction, very difficult to measure, and so on. And basically anything that deals with human emotion is very difficult to measure. So we refer to those as intangible benefits. But yet, when you are doing cost benefit analysis, you must look at the cost and you must look at the benefits. And the benefits include these things. And you ignore them, your project is not viable. So cash flow forecasting provides an estimate of the expenditure incurred and the income generated throughout the life of the product. It is time related. We shall be revisiting this. Cash flow forecasting. Now remember, when you forecast, you are looking into the future. Cash flow forecasting provides an indication of when positive and negative cash flow will occur. It is not easy to get things right due to the number of uncertainties. Anytime you think about the future, you have to think about uncertainties. So the longer the whole life of the product is, the more uncertain the forecast. So we are going to do cost benefit evaluation techniques, so cost benefits appraisal techniques. So the 5 techniques that we'll explore include this. These are the most basic. So the first one is the net profit, where net profit is equal to total income minus total costs. Now, this is a very simple technique, but it does not consider the time element, and it is of limited use when used in isolation. Now, let's look at a very simple example. Now, and this is a general situation. It can apply anywhere. Now, let's say you have 4 options or 4 alternatives. Now, for our purposes, we are just calling them projects. Now, project 1 requires an initial investment of negative 100,000, or rather, let me not put it negative. Negative, and in accounting, that's what we do. For negative means you are giving out money. Positive means you are receiving money. Now, so you could use negative, or in certain cases, you would use brackets. So anytime you find a bracket here, it means your money is going. So let's say project 1, initially you invest 100,000, project 2 1 million, project 3 100, project 4 120. Now that is the money you are putting up to come with the project, and that's why we are calling it year 0. Let's say you are going to the bank. You've gone to the bank, you've requested for a loan of 100, somebody else a million. For this project it's a million, and so on. Now let us say this money is for development. You've developed and your project has started. Now, once the project has started, or you've gotten your product and it's running, in year 1, it gives you a profit of 10,000. Year 2, a profit of 20,000. Year 3, a profit of 30,000. Year 4 is a profit of 30,000. Now, the next year, these are the profits until 5 years. Now, let's say your project life, theory, hypothetically, is 5 years. So remember, you're doing evaluation. You want to see which project do I pick from this. Now, you look at the profit for each project. Now, if you look at this, you'll add what you have gotten from the project and subtract what you put in. Same for this and same for this. So after 5 years, project 1 will give you a profit of 50,000. Project 2 will give you 100,000. Project 3, 50,000. Project 4, 75,000. Now, my question is, and this is my question to you, which project would you pick? Sorry, let me put it there. So my question to you is, which project would you pick from these 4 projects? Anyone? Anyone who can tell me which project you pick?
Project 2.
Project 2. Why?
Highest net profit.
The net profit. So he has picked project 2, the next profit. Anyone with a different, divergent view? Anyone with another view? Now, let's assume. Sorry?
I would pick project 4.
Somebody will pick project 4. For what reason?
Because the net profit as a percentage of the investment is quite high compared to the other projects.
Okay, that's also very reasonable. Now, for the first person, remember, you've invested 1 million. After 5 years, you get 100,000. Now, if you look at the ratio of what you've invested and what you've gotten, that is too low. Project 4 makes sense because what he is saying is that I've invested 120,000, but at the end of 5 years, I'm going to get 75. If you look at this ratio, this ratio is much better than this ratio. Any other person? Any other person with another project? Okay, there's a criteria I said. You want to get your money as soon as possible. You know, we could also, let me see, maybe somebody has a suggestion. No, I'm not seeing anything. You know, the other criteria we could use, which doesn't seem so obvious, is, you know, sometimes when you invest, you want to get your money back very fast. So in terms of recovering your money, so that the whatever happens, any other thing is profit, then you'll see in this project one, you will recover your money in the 5th year, because up to the 4th year, you've only gotten 50,000. So you put your money into a project, your money is tied to the project. Now, if you look at this person, he's invested 1 million shillings, and he'll only recover his money somewhere in the middle of the 5th year. Now you look at this person, he'll recover his money in the 4th year, somewhere in the middle of the 4th year, because this will be 90, and in the third part of the third part of the 4th year, he recovers his money. Now this is 120, the 4th year. Now you can see we are narrowing down. We cannot, when we are comparing prices, let's not just look at this value. So far, based on the 3 criteria, project 4 is still winning, because project 4, he'll recover his money at the end of the 4th year, or what is called in the business sense, he'll get his payback by the 4th year. Now this one will get his payback before the 4th year ends, but his profit is not good. So if we compare the three things, the project 4 is still winning, because the ratio of the investment and the net profit is good. 2, the payback period is still good compared to the other projects. So project 4, based on that, wins. And you can see this is just looking at it in a very basic way. So we need to refine this so that we objectively make a decision on which project to take. So the break, I've just talked about this. If we use the payback period, sorry, we use the net profit. That is one criteria which we can use to choose the project. So then we could also use the payback period, or what is called the time taken to break even. To break even is the pay back the initial investments. So projects with a short payback period are always preferred. It does not consider income or expenditure after the break even point is reached. So like in this case, we are just looking at the profit. But we've said, don't just look at the profit. Look at the break-even point. Now, in terms of break-even point, project 3 is going to win because it has the shortest break-even point. So the payback. So in this case, when you are evaluating a project, look at the net profit and the payback period. Then the other one is what is called the return on investment, or also sometimes it's called the accounting rate of return, or it's simply called rate of return. Now, it can be used to compare different options. Organizations may have a minimum return on investment for projects. It compares the investment period with the net profitability. So return on investment is net return on investment minus cost of investment times 100%. Or return on investment is the final value of investment minus the initial value of investment times 100%. Now, that's just a formula. How does it work? Now, let's consider project 1. Now, the return on investment for project 1 is going to be 100. I mean, now we are doing it yearly. What is the return on? Because this is project 1. Now, we have seen in project 1, we invested 100,000. Year 1, we get 10,000. Year 2, 10,000. Year 3, 10,000. Year 4, 20,000. And year 5, 100,000. So we could use the return on investment. Now, in year 1, this is how we calculate the return on investment. In year 1, we got 100,000. But we put in, in year 1, we got 10,000. But we put in 100,000. And then we divide by 100,000, which is the initial investment times 100%. Now it ends up being 90%, as you can see here. Now in year 2, we will have gotten, because in year 1 we got 100,000, year 2 got 100,000. So in year 2 is going to be 20,000 minus 100,000 divided by 100,000. So in year 2, it's 50,000. Sorry, 80,000. Year 3, we've invested 30,000 minus 100,000 over 100,000, with 70%, and so on. So the return of investment in year 5 is where we get 50,000, and the total return on investment will be 50,000, because what will happen is that we shall add 100,000, 100,000, 100,000 plus 200,000. That is 50,000 plus 100,000. 150,000 minus 100,000 over 100,000 gives us 50,000. So return on investment becomes more objective compared to net profit. Now, sometimes to get it even more objective, the basic return on investment calculation does not take into account the length of time that an investment is held, or the holding period. So we have what is called the annualized return on investment. Now, the annualized return on investment is 1 plus the return on investment raised to the power of 1 over n minus 1 times 100%. So this is a formula that is tries to improve. So in this case, we are evaluating our project based on net profit, payment period, and return on investment, and this gives a more realistic value. So I don't have that. So return on investment is simple to calculate. It makes it a popular method, but it has two major problems. It does not consider the time element. Then return on investment gets compared to bank interest rates. This is not a valid measure as timing and compounding of interest are not considered. This can lead to very misleading conclusions. Now, return on investment is making a certain assumption. Now, let me use this. Remember, you are doing this before you start a project. So you are projecting. So you are saying next year, after 1 year, you'll make a profit of 100,000. After 2 years, after the second year, you'll make a profit of 100,000. So after 2 years, you'll have made a profit of 20,000. After 3 years, 30,000. After 4 years, 50,000. After 5 years, 150,000. But is the value of money today equals to the value of money tomorrow? And you know the answer is no. The price of goods before elections and the price of goods now, or rather, if you go to a supermarket if you went to the supermarket with 1,000 shillings before elections, and if you go to the supermarket with 1,000 shillings now, are you going to buy the same product? Are you going to buy the same quantity of products? And of course, you know, obviously the answer is no. The price of petrol before elections and the price of petrol right now, is it the same? Again, the answer is a big no. So anytime you are forecasting 5 years from now. And you need to be very careful. Like if you read today's newspaper, they are saying the value, if you import a car now, you will pay 100,000 shillings less than if you had imported in December or November. Because now the Kenya shilling has gained value compared to the US dollar. There's a time the $1 was equivalent to 160 Kenya shillings. But now it has dropped to around $1 is around 137. Now, would you have known in December when it was exchanging at 160? Would you have imagined that today it would be exchanging at 137? You don't know. So this forecasting is just a guide. It's just guiding you. So when you are forecasting, to be more realistic, we've said up to this point, we need something that will look at the net profit, it will look at the payback period, and it will look at the return on investment. This is a more realistic figure as compared to just picking net profit alone or comparing to the payback period alone. Now, if you put the three together, you get a more realistic figure. So the next thing we need to do to this table is to put a time value of money, where time value means you need to think about what is what is 20,000? What is 100,000 5 years from now? Because when you are putting this 100,000, it is, you are thinking about it today. But 100,000 today is not going to be the same as 100,000 5 years from now. So, what do I want you to do? Well, you can see it's 4 minutes to the end of time. I want to give you I want you to do some practice. And 2 things I want you to do. I've already posted this in your folder. So I want you to take this table and subject it to this. Yeah, you see, I've done the calculation for year 1. For project 1, for year 1. I mean for project 1, where I've said the return on investment is this, and the total return of investment. So I want you to do this for the other projects. Project 2, project 3, project 4. Look at return on investment. And I also want you to do the annualized return on investment, where N is the number of years. So, of course, you can do that using spreadsheets. You can use a spreadsheet. So you should do this. And then you can also do the annualized return on investment. So there's the basic return on investment, and there's the annualized return on investment. And then compare the 4 projects. Then we'll pick there from there next week. So any questions? Okay then, so we'll stop there and make sure you sign the register.